Welcome to the Health Angle podcast. I am Dr. Mike Headlee, and with me is Dr. Gordon Fimreite. Welcome, Dr.
Hey,
Gordon.
welcome. Thanks, Mike. How are you?
Oh, it's a great day as always, and we're here for our weekly podcast to enlighten people and talk about every angle of health and how people can become the best version of themselves.
Absolutely. This subject is really interesting. This past week, I decided, you know what? I'm going to ask people what they're doing to protect themselves from the EMF. And that's our program, by the way. EMF stands for electromagnetic waves or frequencies or fields, actually, electromagnetic fields. And I asked a bunch of patients, and nobody really had a strategy to protect themselves. So it's kind of one of those subjects that it's all around us, it's everywhere, but nobody seems to be doing much about it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it seems like some of the symptoms from too much electromagnetic field, waves and frequencies can mimic that of somebody not getting enough sleep or somebody who's also, under a lot of stress at work or wherever. So it's kind of an interesting subject. So I'm looking forward to diving in.
Yeah, I'd like to share both of our strategies on how we feel like we can exist in this newer field because cell phones and cell towers weren't around when we were growing up or born. So we have to adapt to that type of stress. And Dr. Gordy, I talk to my clients about four major stresses: physical stresses, chemical stresses, nutritional and chemistry, emotional stressors, but the biggest one, not the biggest, but another one is the electromagnetic frequency or field stress. So
Yeah.
if we can adapt to those four stresses adequately, your body can heal and repair and thrive and function optimally. But if it beats us down too much and affects our cells and our body and our brain, it has some pretty negative effects according to the science. So is that kind of fair to categorize those four
I think
stresses?
you're right on. You're right on, Mike. It's interesting. Before we got on, I'm thinking, okay, here's Dr. Mike and myself. We're sitting in front of a computer, electromagnetic waves. We're in front of a mic, even recording our cameras. I'm in front of a fluorescent light. I'm in probably a 7-story condo building. So I got TV waves and other units besides the waves that pass through from their routers, the Wi-Fi signals. In fact, I looked at my Wi-Fi signal the other day, and there's like 41 Wi-Fi signals that are coming into my computer. They're coming in, that passing through our unit for that matter. So it's all around us. I think the strategies, like you were saying, I mean, those four levels is poignant, and I think this one is way overlooked, and there's not enough attention on it.
Yes, I totally agree. That's really interesting. And most people, even when I'm in a rural area in northern Minnesota, and I can pull up in my office or at my home too, and all these other Wi-Fis I could connect to if I had a password, etc. So that it's hard to escape. So should we talk a little bit about some statistics and science with it? And then I would like to share some of the strategies my family uses and I use personally to try to combat that the best I
That
can.
sounds great. I'll jump in. I'll listen, Mike. Dr. Mike, I'll listen, and then I'll add some comments here and there too, as far
Perfect.
as the science. Yeah.
So according to Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, women should take drastic steps to lower their EMF exposure during pregnancy to reduce the risk of having an autistic child. Microwave radiation from cell phones, Wi-Fi routers, and similar devices concentrate 20-fold in the womb, meaning
Wow.
whatever the reading is outside the womb, the measurement is 20 times higher inside the mother.
Wow.
And I've seen cell phones get tucked into places and, clothing and resting
Yeah.
on the belly. And I have a conversation
Yeah.
with the
Mike,
mother with that.
I'm going to jump in. Like when you go to the gym, I go to the gym a lot, and they'll tuck a phone right in their bra. And we all know that mammillary tissue is sensitive. And you put that in the bra area, you're just magnifying those electromagnetic forces and waves and frequencies. And the other thing too is if they're wearing a bra in addition with a wire rim, that's just an additional antenna bringing more electromagnetic field to that area.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, that's just fun to share with our audience. Even though we're on video, they can listen with the podcast. But yeah, lymph nodes under the armpits and the breast tissues yeah. So non-ionizing cell phone microwave radiation has also been linked to Alzheimer's and infertility, especially in men, both of which, like autism, are rocketing skywards in terms of prevalence. And so one of the best strategies is to eliminate exposure to EMF during sleep. And we'll talk about that because it's the most important time for our
Huge.
brain to detox and repair and recharge. And if we have that cell phone right next to it with all the EMFs and we don't have strategies in our home, that's pretty significant. And then I just have a couple other things to share. I have an article called Why Fried? Is Wireless Technology Dooming a Generation? According to many experts, chronic heavy exposure to wireless radiation is like having severe repercussions for our health, especially that of children who are now being exposed even before birth, like I mentioned.
Wow.
So a number of devices contribute to overall radiation burden, but those kept closest to your body on a regular basis in bras, in clothing, such as your cell phone, are of greatest concern. So inside of our cells are mitochondria, and they're the power plants, and they give us our energy. And so they're really, really impacted by EMFs, resulting in mitochondria and cellular dysfunction. And we're just a big bunch of cells, and we do not want our cells to dysfunction. So the two organs most vulnerable are our heart and our brain, and we need
Mm.
to protect those. So it's really important. And there's a lot of information out there. It's just not as much in the popular press as the diet and the exercise and the weight loss and the sleep and things like that. But it's really, really important, Dr. Gordy.
Yeah, I want to add this, and this is something that I found in the National Institute of Health. Actually, I'll put the link if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're listening to it. Just go to the YouTube channel, look under the comments, and I'll put this link. So the National Institute of Health put out 124 scientific citations on the electromagnetic fields, radiomagnetic frequencies as well. They had different criterion. One was like cancer and the other one was leukemia in children. Under each of these subject matter, they would have these citations where you can actually look up, but they were published in some prominent journals. Genetic damage, you just talked about that. DNA oxidation talks about changing your genes and your chromosomes. And that's a significant, that can lead to kidney problems and red blood cell problems and other oxidative stresses in your body. Talked about genetic damage, neurological diseases, reproduction disorders, immune dysfunction, kidney. I just talked about kidney dysfunction, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, cognitive effects. I mean, these are like the big hitters. These are the ones where I would say they're pretty severe on the spectrum. 124 scientific studies on each one of those subjects. I won't get into any more detail other than that. But and I guess some people might ask, well, what are normal symptoms that you might have? It can range from anything from sleep dysfunction, problems sleeping, in other words, can be depression or kind of feeling down, not a lot of energy throughout the day. You could have kind of brain fog, kind of mental confusions at times, headaches, dizziness. It can also lead to skin irritation. So you might feel itchy or some type of irritation. So those are kind of the more common symptoms, but those are the same symptoms of, for example, you're not getting enough sleep or you're under a lot of stress or you're depressed. So it's hard to differentiate where are these symptoms coming from. It's just one of those things with health. You should be as proactive as you can in all levels, just like you were, the intro that you had about those 4 areas. So you should focus and hone in all areas to make sure that, hey, you're covered. At least you're covered. The other question I think people have is like, if you look at the spectrum, I'm not going to get into the wave spectrum, but on the lower spectrum, it would be like devices that you plug in. Anything that you plug in, your cell phone, even things that aren't plugged in, but your cell phone, TV waves, radio waves, anything that is electrical produced, have the potential of producing these waves, these electromagnetic frequencies, fields, and waves. And so it's important. So on the lower level, household goods, but on the higher level, we're talking like you look in like hospitals, and they have these medical equipment, diagnostic equipment specifically, X-rays, CT scans, MRIs. These are really potent. But my question would be, if you have the really potent stuff and you're only getting that once in a while, and that's supposed to have kind of a potential negative to it. I mean, it's negative enough to your health that at least they're recognizing you should be wearing lead aprons and lead protectors if you're getting X-rays, and even the assistants helping out are required to wear that. So, and if you're getting the X-ray, CT, MRI, you're exposed to a lot of radiation, a lot of electromagnetic damage. That's just a one-time exposure. Now, if you're exposed to cell phones and other devices, that's like a little bit amount over time, which can equal to be a lot. So, yeah, fascinating stuff.
It is. And I think overall, inflammation is increased with the higher exposure to EMFs and all of the dirty electricity, they call it. And there are a lot of meters. I don't have one in front of me, and it is a podcast, so people can't see everything unless they're watching the YouTube channel. But Dr. Gordy, there is fairly inexpensive meters that you can either plug into an outlet to check the dirty electricity, and or hold your cell phone. Okay, and then you have a meter and just see how much EMFs, what freak is it, high amounts when it's on. And so I had one of those meters, and I did some unofficial research on myself. And I said, wow, I rarely talk with it up here, because I'll have it on speakerphone, because distance matters, even though it's all around us. So I have, if I want to listen to something, if I'm not on speakerphone, I have earbuds that aren't Bluetooth, that are connected. I'm kind of old school, but it blocks the EMF. They make EMF blocking, so I can keep this literally 3 feet away from me and not have the EMF. And so inflammation is the number one reason why I want to help my body, because I've had some joint issues and I create enough inflammation in my body anyway. So that's a huge strategy personally why I want to minimize my EMF exposure. If our listeners want some book references, Dr. Mercola has a book called EMF blank. He put a couple letter of blank spaces after that. I mean, it's chock full of research. I have a book here called Earthing, the most important health discovery ever. That's a pretty bold statement. Earthing, the most important health discovery ever. And then there's another book, The Mother Earth Effect. And you can find those on Amazon. And there's chock full of strategies to combat that. So do you have anything else you want to share with the science before we get into some strategies?
Yeah. One more thing, I don't think you even know this, Dr. Mike, but my wife, she's in global sourcing, and her category is electronics.
Okay.
So she mostly focuses in now pretty much consumer electronics, but she's also been in electronics for grid, the big stuff, the transformers, and as you see with the substations, a lot of those components. She was telling me that worldwide now that they do have specifications, they do have ruling bodies. Each country is different, but they all collaborate. And they actually have material scientists that look at the material to get the best material that will be the most safest for humans. And so, for example, Mike, I remember years ago, there was a cord. Can you see this? Okay, that's a ferrite bead. It's actually on my headset. But they used to put these on the end of, like, if you plug in your computer, they used to have these things, little nodules at the end of the computers. And I remember us talking about this years ago, and that used to block signals either going to or from the outlet. and to the computer. Well, I asked my wife, I go, what do you think happened? She goes, well, it's possible now that there's so many, like each of the components in an electrical system, including the cord, they all have their own criterion and they have to meet certain levels. And she goes, what they're doing is they're inventing material that will have better biological consequences on your body. In other words, they're more protective against getting electromagnetic fields, against other things that can be negative to our body. And they're also coming up with material on the cell phone, the plastic on cell phone cases. So the plastic and the computer plastics and even the components inside the computer. And each one of these specificities has its own like ruling board. So it gets really intense. There's a lot of minds going into making these products more safe. The other thing that I want to point out is the FCC marking. The FCC is a Federal Communications Commission, and they're the ruling body here in the United States. And they actually have a marking to just ensure that quality is safe. And in other words, if somebody from a different country invented an electronic product and we want to bring it into the United States, they have to follow the FCC rules and regulations. And if they don't, they won't be able to market and sell it in this country. So they specifically have engineers, electrical engineers and product design engineers to make sure that they're minimizing the negative effects on human beings. So that's kind of a new, something that I learned just from my wife telling me. But the other thing too, Mike, getting it, just one more comment about the science, and this might be on the fringe. So I really am interested to hear your comment on it. No matter where you read like the negative effects, whether it's on the National Institute of Health, their website, or somewhere else, the American Cancer Society, they say something similar to this. Now, this is from that source that I'm putting in the comments, 121 to 24 scientific citations. It says, however, the possible biological effects of exposure to RF, EFM have not yet proven, and there are insufficient data on the biological hazards to provide a clear answer to the possible health risks. So that's kind of like the mode. You see those kind of marks that, in the mainstream that really, they're not going to commit one way or another. So they kind of call it still controversial. It can be a little touchy, the product. It's a multi-billion-dollar product, electrical component goods and products and consumer electronics. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So sometimes you're just wondering if there's lobbying going on versus the independent scientists that are proving some of the health effects that we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm not as polished as you, Dr. Gordy, and I just kind of push back and I'll say, what will you take and accept as evidence? Because then I'll start grabbing these books that I have and I referenced, and then I'll get Dr. Mercola's book because I've read that and given it to someone else, and I'll just start going down the references and the research articles. And I said, well, how many research articles and what will you accept as evidence? Because it's out there. It just is, and it depends on how hard you want to look and what you're looking at and what the effects. And I think the biggest challenge is if you sleep with the phone right next to you one night, geez, I've slept great. I feel really good. I'm not inflamed. I'm ready to go. And you don't always feel the one-to-one effect, and same like eating burgers that have trans fats and eating, some of the negative foods. If you can adapt to some stressors, which we can, otherwise we wouldn't be here, then people think, long term, it's not a big deal. I just slept with my phone last night and, on my chest, and I'm fine. So I never think of just only short-term effects, Dr. Gordy. I always think of long game too. I only want to live till I'm 120. I don't need to live till I'm 300. So that's why I protect myself from the EMFs. I just want to make it to 120. I'm not, want to be a biohacker for 300 or 400. Yeah, just give me 120 quality years.
I love it. You got to have goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I have, as we speak here, I'm going to show you what I have my feet on.
Where did you go, Mike? I can't see you.
On my podcast listeners, I have a mat that is called a grounding mat.
Yeah,
And there's a little cord that's plugged in to the third prong of an outlet that is grounded to the earth. And that's how I can be on a podcast and on a Zoom meeting and on my computer. And like you said, my cell phone's by me, all these lights. And I feel, and I've done some research with that, with the meter, when I put the phone away from me and when I have my phone on me and my feet are grounded, then the meter doesn't pick up the highest frequencies of electromagnetic fields. And so that's one of my main strategies is I ground myself whenever possible. And I have a grounding sheet and a grounding pillowcase that I sleep on.
that's great. Really important. Yeah, I know they also make these EMF neutralizing plugs. So you can put that right in your bedroom as well. And it has a way to negate some of the effects of the EMG. Yeah. What else, Dr. Mike? What else do you have? I have a list too, and I'll listen to you and feed back and forth.
Why the one of the main reasons people get brain fog and tired and sluggish if they're sleeping with a phone and or talking too much with the phone by their head is it shunts calcium into our cells. And when you get too much imbalance in our electrolytes, then we get brain fog and tired and fatigue. And so I take magnesium. An average dose is 400 to 500 milligrams. So I take mine at night to keep that balance in my body. One of the many hundreds of benefits of magnesium, but that protects my cells from shunting too much calcium in there and damaging my cells. We've been turning off our Wi-Fi and unplugging our Wi-Fi at night. We use grounding sheets, grounding pillowcase, and then I use my EMF headsets, like you said, that are great. I use something called a Q3 band, a quantum 3 band that people can look up online, Q3, that is supposed to block almost all electromagnetic frequencies and help our blood stay viscous. And then I also have a protector OtterBox on my phone, but I do have a sticker on the back of my phone that says that blocks EMFs when I am using and touching the phone. And then
I think those are common, Dr. Mike.
Yeah. So we have those, and I think they're beneficial from what I've read, and I have other clients that use those. But the number one way they say to earth or to ground yourself and protect yourself is to do earthing, and water is the best way. Even if you just walk on the beach and your feet, you don't have to be in the ocean. It can be on a lake, but you're grounding your feet on the beach and in the water is really, really awesome for negative ions, anti-inflammatory effects, and just to protect yourself and recharge yourselves from all the EMFs. So any good strategies you want to share, Dr. Gordy?
Yeah, I got a few more here. There's the earbuds. They actually make a blue tube, no wire, blue tube. And that's phenomenal to keep electromagnetic waves and other frequencies away from your brain. You talked about if you're on a cell phone, keep it away from you. They make pendants. I know you talked about a wrist band as well, but they make pendants around the neck. They also have, like, here's something that I have. This is an electromagnetic, kind of like a scarf. So you can cover it up on your phone and the phone will not ring. I mean, it completely covers everything. I've tried to make phone calls or receive phone calls when my phone is in this. I know that it works. So this thing can be used if you need to be in, cover something, your router, if you're between your router and your desk, that's another area. And then Bluetooth technology, thanks. Yeah, and then Bluetooth technology, we talked about that. Go to the gym and you see all these young guys lifting weights. First of all, they got their phones in their pocket. Fertility problems, it's a big issue. And as well as they're plugged to their Bluetooth and headsets or earbuds, which are horrible. You need the cord. What else do we got? Airplane mode. If you're in your car driving, you should definitely use your airplane mode if you're not using your phone, especially on long drives, because your metal car is kind of like an antenna. It's just accentuating those electromagnetic waves and frequencies and fields. So definitely airplane mode. And then GPS, something small. Those are also full of electromagnetic fields. And then if you put your Bluetooth on in the car, that's just another one there. Wired mouses, little stuff that people don't think of, hairdryer, mouses, wireless mouse. You're better off using a wired, electric toothbrush, exactly. And like I make a smoothie every morning. Your smoothie, your blender, that's another one. So they're everywhere. You talked about the EMF meter, which is phenomenal. The wireless baby monitors. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Clocks that are right next to your bed. That's another one. That's you get just a battery. Minimize that electricity. And this is a little intense, and I don't plan on doing this, but they even suggest turn off breaker switches to the bedroom at night. That's maybe a little bit more than what I would do. But then again, you don't know. You just don't know exactly how much is coming into the bedroom. EMF blankets and canopies over your bed. They make film for the windows. They make drywall, EMF protective drywall. They have all types of clothes. So they say, if you're in a room, put the dimmers on. That'll reduce some of the fluorescent light bulbs. And then, get smart meters, and the list goes on. Opt out for electric, water, and gas. Is called utility smart meter programs. That's another EMF.
Smart TVs and all the, Kindles and all the wireless devices there are today.
Yeah, so many. And then even also in the bed, the metal frames on your bed. And I talked about this in a previous podcast, the wire coils, both of those can act as an antenna and accentuate the EMFs that are coming to you as you're sleeping all night long. And then the other ones too is your metal amalgam fillings. That's another that people don't think of. That's like a magnification as well. I've had all mine removed. And I remember when I had mine removed, the dentist said, make sure that you're detoxing those metals as well that come from, the mercury, for example. So I was taking the chlorella for a while after that. But even by taking foods that you eat and some of the water that you may drink, not always healthy. There's mercury, there's heavy metals, mercury and aluminum. So some of the things people can do is chelation therapy, glutathione, green algae, and chlorella. I do glutathione and chlorella. Those are the two that I do regularly. That's pretty much extensive on my list.
Cool. That's a huge list. So with only 2 minutes left, we like to end by asking our audience, what one thing did you learn or relearn or get introduced to that you're going to share with a friend or family at work tomorrow? So what one thing are you going to take away that you can share and help people with? And then what's your one action step that you can do after you've heard what we talked about? Are you going to look into a grounding sheet or a grounding pad or a sticker for your phone? Are you going to, get some kind of plugins instead of doing, Wi-Fi everything, and have computers plugged in instead of, not have smart appliances and smart TVs, and just have stuff plugged in, and maybe unplug the Wi-Fi router at night? So what one action steps are you going to take? And with that, I think Dr. Gordy and I have been in practice a long time. We're going to dive into some posture and some ergonomics next time, and not hardcore chiropractic just yet, and talk about the spine and nervous system, but we'll talk about posture and ergonomics and how you can check that angle of your health and make sure that's so important, since everyone is sitting so much these days.
Big thing. It's a big issue. Ergonomics and proper ergonomics and how that affects your overall health. Big issues.
Absolutely.
I'm excited, Dr. Mike. So I guess we'll see you next week. And thanks for the viewers. Please subscribe, please like, and we'll see you next week.